yet. So if there's any during the meeting or after, we can report that out, okay?
Okay, so should I just not mention the public comment or?
No, I think when you get to that item on the agenda, you would definitely want to ask, but I'll update. I just want to give you a heads up.
Okay,
And as far as the meetings, the initial guidance I went out, it says the superintendent has to record each vote and so on. What we've been doing, and it's worked rather well, at the beginning of the meeting, if you can just confirm who is present, participating. And then if you decide to take any motions, if you could just repeat the person's name so it's read into the record, this is being recorded.
Okay.
And the second, and then following the discussion, any votes that you consider need to be done by roll call, and you can do those, okay?
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Yep, thanks, Jennifer.
Okay.
Turn it over
You're
to you.
welcome. Okay. Now, everybody's on mute.
Yeah, typically, Jennifer, the way it goes is that, if you're facilitating the meeting, and which you are, the rest of us would be muted unless somebody, wants to say something that can turn their
Okay.
mic on and during votes and stuff. But yeah, when you
Okay.
have multiple groups like this, it typically works well to keep everybody unmuted.
Okay,
And then
thank you.
just signal by raising their hand if they'd like to speak.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. This is all new to me. Okay, I'm going to call to order at 4:32, the Trenton School Board meeting. If there's anybody watching on YouTube, which I can't see if there are, but if you are, I welcome you to the meeting. If anybody had any questions, I believe they would have been forwarded in advance of this meeting. So I would like to call for the approval of the minutes. But first, I need a approval of the minutes, please. I'm not getting.
So moved.
Jennifer, can you, sorry.
Tom seconds.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know who moved
So,
first,
Jennifer?
sorry.
Yeah, Jennifer,
Yeah.
if I may, I believe it was Tom, but when you get a motion or if it was Gary, I apologize. But when you get a motion, if you could just say the person's name making the motion and then the second, and then when we're taking a roll call, you call the person's name. That way, those are the guidelines we've been given to do these meetings remotely.
Okay, so roll call everybody first. I apologize then. Okay, do I just
No,
say who I
no,
see
that's
on
fine.
here?
This is all new.
Okay, so attending this meeting is Gary Burr, Tom Reeves, Darcy Throckmark, sorry, Mike, Mark, Nancy, Aaron, and Julie. And I have a picture of a map, so I don't know if that's anybody or not, but I have a picture of a map as well.
That is our
and-
technology person, Josh Young.
Okay, thank you. And thank you everyone for bearing with me. This is my first time doing this Zoom stuff, so I'm a little lost. I had a motion to approve the minutes by Gary and seconded by Tom. And if there's any questions or comments, I actually have one. I need to change the amount of the school board's approval of the budget. It was entered incorrectly. It is $4,386,885. And does anybody else have any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, then
I'll
if we
just
can
sort of
vote.
say that
All those in. I'm sorry, Mark? Yes,
Yeah, just for clarification, what you're saying is the budget the school committee recommended in the minutes was incorrect, and you'd like that amount to be reflected? Is that as per the vote? Is that
Correct.
the piece that you're, okay. And so
Correct.
Mike, we and Nancy, we just need to verify that amount. If that's what the school committee voted on, then that would be appropriate. Thank you.
It is. I looked it up just to double check, and I made a mistake when I did the minutes. I was looking at a wrong version of the budget. But I verified it earlier today. Sorry.
So you're you're good to go moving forward, Jennifer. Thank you for clarifying
Okay,
that, Mike.
okay. All those in favor? Okay, okay. Aaron's in favor.
I
I'm not,
approve.
can you guys hear me? Okay, Darcy approved.
Yes.
Jennifer, you should approves.
Gary approves.
Tom approves.
And Tom approves. So passed. Next is public comment. I do not believe we have any.
So,
Has any
Jennifer,
questions been sent in?
Prior to the meeting, so if anybody out there is listening and they'd like to make public comment, I just want to direct them. There are directions on the agendas when they're released in terms of how to provide public comment for the board and for the record. We received nothing to date for this meeting, but certainly if we have anybody that has commentary during the meeting or following, we'll provide that to the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. New business, principals report.
All right, so I sent the principal's report for folks to peruse, and I will just sort of go over some of the details. Enrollment-wise, we had one departure learning. And then in the time while we were in remote learning, we had a student enroll from Blue Hill. Actually, they were enrolled in a program in Southern Maine, similar to Kids Peace, and they will be coming into are currently a kindergartner and will be going into first grade next year. At the time, as I wrote right now, that school is providing the remote services for that student for us with all the transitions. The team that met felt that that was the most appropriate thing to do for right now. And when we get to our budget, there'll be some reflection in the numbers as we talk about that because of that student enrolling. They're in the process enrolling in Kids Peace at the moment, and that is the decision of the IEP team when we met. Currently, that kindergarten enrollment is a moving target. I think actually we're at 19. With some, and the reason it's at 19, there are some kids that I know who will be moving out of Trenton. I've already sort of started that list of kiddos, and as I know more, I'll sort of share those in terms of that flow of students in and out of our school. So it looks like our current enrollment coming into kindergarten will probably be around 19 instead of the 21. In terms of staffing updates, we have posted and for that K2 special ed position, and as we get some applicants, we'll start the process for hiring that person. We had a retirement that went out. Barbara Keene, our reading interventionist, Title I reading recovery teacher, is retiring, and she has spent, a little aside note, I've known Barbara not only as a colleague in working with her, but also knew her as a parent when I was in my other position in Bar Harbor. She has been an educator for many years, from classroom teacher to special ed teacher to reading interventionist. Loves working with kids. I remember years ago visiting schools and actually visiting Trenton and seeing her teaching in the first grade classroom, at that time. And I'm so happy there's many wonderful notes that went out from staff. The commitment and time that she has spent with kids in this community, to make them better people and educated people. So she'll be sorely missed. And actually an ad for that position went out today for Barb's position. As you know, we had an unfortunate death within our group, and I sent you all that note, and that is for our admin assistant for special ed and the ed tech. And so I'll be posting for that position. I just want to let you know that the school I've had 3 children, adult children who, live in Maine, and we bought them each a flowering plant. Part of that idea was that their mom, helped children grow for all her life. She was a PE teacher before, and then realizing that she just needed to be in schools, and she substituted in Hancock and elsewhere, and then came to us as an ed tech and then the admin assistant, and did an admirable job. So we got a plant for each of them, and then I've kind of pulled together all just wonderful things staff had to say when they learned about her passing, and made a little 4-page thing for the family, and they really appreciated it. And one of us is that their mom had always talked about moving to a different part of the state to be closer to some of the, the other children, but she didn't want to leave her Trenton family, and that's sort of a testament to the folks here. And then we've had a resignation. What I just learned recently, our pre-K teacher resigned. I was speaking with Melissa Mattis the other day, and then I spoke with Sarah today, and she said yes. There's some things that she has to take care of. She hopes to be back teaching pre-K kids because that's her passion, but she needs to take care of some things. And our middle school, Michelle, resigned 2 weeks ago as well in the middle school. So we will be, doing some ads for those positions as well. So what's been going on since we got to remote learning? As you know, we sort of transitioned in March to remote learning. One of the things that we were lucky enough, it's different at different schools, is all of our kids have one-to-one laptops. So having devices for kids wasn't the issue, but making sure that they had some kind of robust connection. We have worked the district team to get hotspots for those folks, but we did early surveys to make sure that our families were connected to the internet. But that's only part of the problem. You can have devices and you can have connection, but then depending on how many kids are in the house, depending on how well you're able to have people in different places while they're learning, are all the things that sort of play a role in whether or not online learning can be successful. But so what remote learning included for us was live meets on Google Meets is what we've been using, or video lessons that teachers would post to the website. Teachers would have office hours for drop-in or for scheduled times. Our special ed and interventionists have been meeting with kids one-on-one. Small group sessions, both within classrooms and virtual classrooms. Students in grades 4 through 8 have been using Google Classroom to do that workflow piece of having things assigned and having materials sort of turned in. Daily lessons are posted on the school website, and if you haven't gone to the website and you see that big blue instruction button, you click on that and you could see the whole series of things that people have been putting together. And in terms of internet connectivity, to just jump back with that, our kindergarten teacher lives about 1.5 miles from me, but his internet isn't really that great. And so for his meets on either Mondays or Fridays, I wipe down my kitchen, and so he can come up and work from there, and I'm upstairs, so we're social distanced, and he's able to do his live class, and then an opportunity to listen, which is always actually kind of fun. So I kind of like that he has to come over, and then when he leaves, I wipe down the table, I wipe the knobs, so we're doing everything to make sure that we're safe, and then he's able to do his live sessions with his kids. It's been quite an adventure. And then some kids have received some learning packets from our teachers to be able to do some paper and pencil work. In terms of, our school goal, and that one of the things we were focusing was on social emotional learning and the Mind Up curriculum, and teachers have been doing live mindful minutes with their classes when we meet with them, or they've posted them using the chime, and if parents wanted to click on and do a mindful minute with their child, they could do that. And let's see what else I wrote. Then as of May 1st, all of our students had some kind of access, but I'm still working. I still have some kids that had not so robust, and I still have some hotspots to get out to folks. I had kids that didn't need them, but then when that happened, I have others that popped up. So the hotspots that I do have will all be out to folks who might need a little bit more robust connection to the internet. You should know that we have a family support team. There is a form on the website that folks can click on and fill out to ask questions. And I meet with Nurse Crystal, Nancy Eddy, our guidance counselor, and we take a look at whether or not anyone has filled those out to meet those families' needs. Teachers also have a form that they can fill out, but usually a lot of the information that I get about kids and family needs is through team meetings that I have with my teachers. And then when that team meets, the family support team, we talk about those and sort of divvy up who's gonna do what, and try to circle back with the parents or the teacher if there was a concern there to be able to help solve the problem. As I said, I do team meetings with the leadership team, K2, 3, 4, 5, 8, with my special ed folks, interventionists, and try to have the ed techs as well. And then specials teachers as well to talk about what they're doing. We had established buddy teachers early on so that folks can have some support within their classroom. It's not just a classroom teacher, and if there was an emergency, then that support person would be able to sort of take over any of the live sessions or what have you. But so far we've been only had to use that a couple times, but it was more around a teacher having technical issues and then having one of those support people in ed tech helped in the middle school when a teacher just couldn't get online. They were having all kinds of issues, and it created a really seamless transition. So it was great to have those people connected with teachers to make that work out really well. Folks should know that if we had any scheduled spring coaches in terms of extracurricular, that they were compensated for the lost season. That was only track. We did not have anybody in boys baseball or girls softball at the time, so we didn't do that. But Coach Johnson was both our AD, but he also he was the track coach for us. Student recognition. As you know, for years, we've been doing the first grade poems with the Bar Harbor Garden Club, and we had a couple of our students in first grade who got first place, and then also they also got first place at the state, and we're waiting to hear how their poem did, which is called Garden Rabbit. And I will get the words for Garden Rabbit and I will share that with everybody. We have not heard about New England's right now. Also, there were 3 other students from that classroom who had honorable mention, and I'll read you the titles of those poems, and then I'll get those poems so people can read them. There was Ghost Garden, Garden Surprise, and Flowers Grow. So that's awesome. And I'll share is I just heard that one of our 3rd graders is taking part in a independent film presentation, and that I'll be signed up to watch on Wednesday afternoon, and it's sort of a nature film. Well, I'll have more details for it, but this young lady is a finalist, and as I learn more about that, I will let you all know. But it's very exciting that one of our 3rd graders did a little film, and she's a finalist, and that's pretty exciting. Staff recognition. There's no way to really pick out one person. The folks here have been incredible to climb such a steep hill in terms of learning how to do, transfer what they do in the classroom remotely. It's been amazing. And I've also learned that, some of our staff are, really good and kind of like being in front of the camera and do really nice videos and are pretty darn creative. And so that's been interesting. People have been able to stretch themselves and grow. And really in K2 and K3, it's really been, and some of you all, it's, the teachers have had to teach the parents because they're doing the job now of those, of the teachers in the classroom. And so I'm just impressed. And also our food service folks, and I have mentioned them. As you have seen, Jennifer comes in on Mondays and Wednesdays and is part of that crew that passes food out to our 70 plus kids that come by on those 2 days. So it's just been a really heartening and definitely an adventure. School wellness update. People are taking opportunities. There is a closed Facebook page that's just for staff that they use when they go out on a hike to continue promoting wellness. It was really important that they stay connected in some way because we were thinking about both physical health and mental health, and connectedness is one of those things. And so that's what brought this up. And if people go on an adventure, they kind of share that, and that has been really helpful and healthy for folks. And a lot of people are participating in the Blue Cross Blue Shield, the Moonshot Challenge, where people get an opportunity to log whether they go for a walk or go for a bike ride to see if we can add up miles to go to the moon. I talked about food, facilities, transportation. Our water test did come back. If you recall, we were doing a separate test ourselves to see if those PFAS numbers were similar to what the state did, and they are. So they're still within that range, well below the EPA numbers. But it's definitely something that we'll probably want to take a look at. New Orleans is ready to install the flow meter that folks approved, but we haven't had them in yet to do that. And as soon as we have that opportunity, we'll do that in there. So when it comes time to start thinking about whether we want to filter our water, we'll have the appropriate numbers for that. The buses went back to Sear for their deep cleaning. And so we're a school without buses, and Kim and Barb have done a really good job keeping our food service area clean and ready to go once they leave the building, so that when they come in, the staff are safe. Academic updates. The A-team, at the time I wrote this, we hadn't completed our end of year reporting and conversation, but that guide has gone out to teachers, and today we're talking with staff about that, and we'll talk more about the particulars when we all meet next week. Common studies have been taking place bi-weekly with Julie, with folks and their colleagues, and I listed those there. And then I listed out, our upcoming meetings.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mike? Okay, Mark, superintendent's report.
Yes. So that was a rather lengthy report by Michael, and I think it's a testament to show you how much is going on, that even though our schools may be operating remotely, they're operating. And I know information is very important, and I'm really glad to see everyone, because one of the things that's come to light for me is not having the opportunity to do our local meetings have left board members, community members, a lot of people with a lot of questions, so that we maintain the flow of information. So I'm pleased that we're back, and we'll be back on our regular schedule. If it pleases the board, we'd like to recommend meeting through the summer, because there'll be a lot of questions and information and things that we need to update you on. So certainly, being sensitive to to family in summertime, but this is a little different, and we think it's important for continuity of communication and messaging that we continue. So we're committed to doing that. Mike gave out a lot of accolades for people, but I need to, in addition to the echoing the comments about our staff, our teachers, and I just need to say that our principals are going above and beyond. And Mike is, you can just see the behind the scenes, the approach. He's pitching in to do anything and everything he can. And we're really lucky to have him, as we are all of our staff. Goes without saying that we're going to talk about budget. We've got some challenges, and COVID-19 is going to exacerbate some of those challenges for all of us. So we're going to talk about that. So certainly shout out to Nancy and her staff for keeping us going during these times. And with Julie, I mean, she's been tirelessly trying. Folks, just, I think your board gets it in the community, but we literally flipped the switch on March 13th overnight without any preparation, anybody, parents, students, teachers. And Julie has been a real architect, but a collaborator to help get us to a place where we're doing the very best, everyone's doing the very best we can with remote learning. So she's here to provide some information if the board members have any questions, but I just want to stress how impressed I am that we are operating. Can we do better? Sure, we can all do better, and we're going to adapt, and we're going to do better. And we've got some things in motion to do outreach and collect that feedback, but we're committed to doing that. I mean, we've always been leaders in Trenton and in our district, and we're going to continue to do that. So I don't have anything further beyond Michael's specifics, but I would add that if people are looking for information, do not hesitate to look at the newsletters, look at our websites, and if you don't get the information you need, just please reach out to us. Where we'll get back to people, and if we don't know the answer, we'll research it. So thank you. I'll just defer to the rest of the information on the agenda, Jennifer, unless you have questions for me.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mark? Okay, nomination and election of probationary teachers.
Yes, that would be me.
Yeah.
I would like to first say, for any board members who've not been through this process, we have a very rigorous process for evaluation of staff and administration. But to that end, I think on a larger plateau, when we hire people, when the board approves nominations, that's an investment in our staff. And it's a two-way street, and we can all improve no matter where we are in the process. And so I'm really pleased with the work that's been done. We have one individual that I'm going to recommend to you, but normally there are multiple candidates through the probationary cycle. Currently, the probationary cycle is a 3-year cycle. And we feel that's a real powerful piece because it allows people to see the areas they're progressing in, but where they can get better. That's going to move back to 2 years per the legislature. It is what it is. That's the law. We're going to comply with it. But I really, I just have to say that moving back to a 2-year cycle is, I think, at a disadvantage more than anything for our staff. But, we'll continue within the same framework. The individual I'm nominating for you this evening is completing 2 years of probationary status. It's a special educator doing a fine job, and that's Story Cross. And I'd like to recommend Story Cross to you, to the board, for nomination for movement from probationary year 2 to probationary year 3 status. I'm happy to take any questions, or Michael, if you want to add anything, please do.
Again, special ed that's a tough position, and the variety of things that those folks have to do, both academically, behaviorally, emotionally, for students and their families. It's definitely a job of love, from those folks. And when you talk to people who are in that position, and I've known Story for a little while, again from my previous position, and have seen her interest in in that position and watching her grow, and just love having her as part of the staff here. She's been an asset.
That's awesome. Okay, if I can get a motion from somebody? Who would like to make a motion?
Oh, Gary, so moved.
Seconded by?
Second.
Thank you, Darcy. All those in favor?
Approve.
I'm
Approved.
So approved, so moved. Congratulations to Story.
Yeah,
She's really
thank you
awesome.
very much. Congratulations, Story.
Can I ask you, Mark, did the state say why they want to change probationary? Like, what was their thought behind it?
Well, like anything else with any bill, there's politics involved. I mean, there advocacy through groups. The Maine Education Association is advocating that a probationary period be shorter. And then there are folks of other opinion. But at the end of the day, we work collaboratively through it, and that was what the legislature adopted. So that's really the background to that. It's just a shorter window. And, frankly, I'll just say a longer window, again, is more of an advantage to it's an advantage to the employee and the employer. It's an opportunity to really cultivate the relationship and make sure that it's a good fit and it's a good match. If that window narrows, that lessens the opportunity for both. But, I don't want to digress into what the politics are or aren't. We're going to work through the system. We have good relationships with our staff, and we're going to continue to work through that process. But that's the background. Julie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Whoops.
You're all set, Jennifer? You're muted. You just need to unmute.
Am I still muted?
No, you're good now.
Okay. Authorization for the superintendent to apply for and receive state and federal funds.
So this, you may remember, if I may, this is a housekeeping item. We call them housekeeping items because there are certain things that I need authorization to do from the board. Like anything else, because we're a collection of school boards and the AOS, many times we do things 11 times with each individual district. This is granting your superintendent the ability to apply for, receive federal funds. And then there's another item that further down, and just, I can explain when we get to that. But Nancy, do you have anything to add to that, or Julie? It's an annual thing that we do.
Yep. Okay, then if we could have a motion.
Gary, so moved.
Tom, second.
Thank you, Gary, for making the motion, and Tom for seconding it. All those in favor?
Approve.
Approved.
Approve. So moved. Thank you. Yes.
Jennifer, if I may, the next item is just, again, I mentioned that we're a collection of school boards, and normally this is a positive thing if we're able to cluster our application under one framework. And in doing so, if we can have one fiscal agent, the reason we list Barbara is it's the first one in the alphabet, the AOS. Any of the Trenton school, Trenton students, staff are eligible for come directly to Trenton. They're not displaced over the AOS or to another school. But this, if the board approves this action item, it allows for us to account for those funds under Bar Harbor using them as the fiscal agent.
Okay. We can get a motion.
Gary, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Approved.
Approved. So moved. Thank you, Gary, for the motion and Tom for seconding, and it was approved. Thank you. Appointment of truant officer, attendance officer, and school physician.
Yes, this is again an annual piece that we do. It's that time of year. And for truancy officer and attendance officer, it's not uncommon to have the principal named in those capacities. So I'd like to nominate Mike Zabore, Principal Mike Zabore, as the truant officer and the attendance officer. And for the position of school physician, Dr. Kathleen Cotis.
Move to accept the slate as presented. Tom.
Gary, second.
All those in favor?
Approved.
Approved.
Thank you, Tom, for the motion and Gary for the second, and it was approved and so
Thank you.
passed.
Jennifer, Michael, when you're recording this approval, you're recording them as if they are unanimous votes, correct? Yep. Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think if we get into the budget, Jennifer, if I could just have a piece right at the beginning, and then I really want to defer to Mike and Nancy, but whenever
Okay,
you're
go
ready,
right ahead.
please.
Go right ahead.
So first off, we're in some extraordinary times for all of us. It doesn't matter where you live, what you do for a living, or as a family. We're all being impacted in ways that we never could have imagined, and I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge, even before this challenge hit us, that we had a very unique and challenging budget. I will say again, now more than ever, I believe it's incumbent upon us to work collaboratively and collectively, reach across the aisle, do whatever we can to work with our government officials at all levels and work so that we're doing the very best we can for our kids and for our communities. I recognize there are some unique challenges. I'd like to say that, the history in the past, we've had some divergent opinions about priorities and budgets and with respect to some members of the community and the board, but never once have I ever questioned people's care for their community or for the kids. There's a lot of competing priorities in the town of Trenton right now. And education is a big chunk of that. And I'd like to think that, and I know, this is being a product of public education, it's the great equalizer. It really is. It doesn't matter what your income strata is, where you came from, where you grew up. Public education really is the great equalizer and can really, in a way, it really defines America as being a land of opportunity. I believe that. I know that. I still believe that, and I'm committed to that. We've got some challenges with this budget. We do. And I do not want to see gaps widen. I want to see us be able to navigate that, but it's going to take a long-term plan to address it. There are some pathways that have been outlined. You'll consider and look at and receive and process the School Evaluation Option Committee report. I have reviewed it, but I haven't reviewed it to the degree or the extent that I really need to be able to weigh in, as I know Michael and other educational leaders and board members can and should. That can be a component, but through it all, no matter what, recognizing that wherever we're coming from as administrators, be that school or town, we recommend things. Ultimately, the boards, although representative of personal opinions, need to recognize what the needs of the constituents are. For the school board, you have one constituent, that's your students, and you know that. And other government officials have other constituency groups, and they need to balance that. We recognize that. We started out with some real double-digit increases that were shocking, even to us that have been in this system for educational system for many years. But these are not short-term pieces that we're going to be able to overcome, not the way we're presently defined and structured. Many of the costs that drive our budget, no matter what district you're a part of or not a part of, those costs are going to drive the budget. We're a people-intensive organization. We'll continue to be, no matter what the framework is. Special education costs are a piece of the budget. They're a significant piece right now, the way our demographics are structured. But at the end of the day, that pathway forward to address that isn't going to come overnight. So there are some creative things that have been suggested that I hope we can all consider. But everybody has to be committed to many hands make work light. And I think if we can keep that framework in mind, and we can keep the framework in mind that this is a long-term piece or longer term than a year, then I think that's important to bear in mind. I guess what I wanted to say is that some of the things we're going to talk about right now are going to hurt. They're painful. I want you to know that the budget that we present is not a wish list. It never is a wish list. I mean, because frankly, if it's a wish list, then it probably shouldn't be in the budget. It should be for one of those things where somebody comes forward and said, hey, we've got this pile of money, and if we didn't have this, what would you like to do with it? That's not what this budget is all about. These are needs, not wants. And whatever we consider, or whatever the board considers to eliminate, or ultimately the town considers supporting, is going to have an impact. It most definitively will. There are a lot of things, if we're focusing on a number, there's cuts that can be made further, but those cuts will have devastating impact on programs, students, and personnel. And I know the board understands that, but also we're trying to walk that line in terms of doing what's best for our kids, but also recognizing what the community can do right now as well. So I'm sorry for the long-winded piece, but I think I needed to really put it out there that once again, to our colleagues in government and to our community members, that we want to work together. And ultimately, we have to come up with a budget, and that this is going to be a painful one because there are some particular needs right now, not wants, that we have to address. And that may result in some real hard decisions. We're going to recommend some things for the board to consider, because in addition to the budget that we previously reviewed, we have received notification, and we're prepared that we're going to have some significant increased special education costs above and beyond what we knew before this budget was drafted and presented to the school board. So I'd also like to say that many people wonder, well, if schools are closed, we must be saving all kinds of money. What does that look like? First, let me say schools are not closed. We are operating remotely. And while there are some savings that we will realize and will report, and we're not spending that money, there are also costs that weren't anticipated that may arise. I'll give you a quick example. We may save money in fuel costs, but we may spend a little more money in food. And we may save money in some areas, conferences, professional development, however, technology. So there'll be a reconciliation, and obviously we'll be able to account for all that. But I want folks to know that it's can be, I don't want to say complicated, but it takes time to reconcile that. So with that, that'll impact carry forward. I also need folks to understand that we are keeping a very, very specific and detailed ledger of anything that we spend money on that is related to COVID-19, so that if there is eligibility for any funds or funding through CARES Act and other programs, we're going to be right there making sure that we apply for and receive those monies. So again, I apologize for being long-winded, but many of those things that I wanted to outline to the board, I've received from community members. So I'm gonna turn it over to Michael and Nancy. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mark. Mike? You're up.
I had to find my mouse underneath all the paper that's on top of my laptop. So I sent to board members 2 copies of PDFs of the budget. One of them was the approved budget on the 10th of March. So you have that, which was an 11.6 increase in town appropriation. And then you got what is considered version 1 of the adjusted budget. And that you will see in the other document called FY21 Potential Trenton School Budget Adjustments. That sheet, just so you know, at the top of it, it says that that includes the what the potential special ed costs are for the new enrollment, which is $74,450. That was plugged into that budget that was approved by the school board on March 10th. And then that version 1 has the adjustments that came with like insurance, where we went from that there was a 6% increase. So we applied those savings there, and you'll see that reflected. And then we came heating oil. We locked in at $1.25. That was quite amazing. So you see that reflected there. And then that version 1 has removing the behavior specialist to 25%. There was a lot of discussion about that. The reason we ended up sort of removing it is that we are working really hard with the high school and other areas to fund that position differently this year. It doesn't mean that need has gone away. And actually that need for that position is probably greater now in terms of what our families and our students are experiencing and what we'll have to do as schools to meet you know, those social emotional needs as we come back to school, whatever that form may be. But we think we could be creative in finding a different way of paying for that within the first year. So in that version 1, you know, you'll see the total savings of $43,000, and then below that, the numbers that represent what that budget increase is and what it looks like for town appropriation, and then the increase per 100,000, and then what that total budget number would look like. And then what I did is I did 5 other versions after that, where I added a little something, and there's an asterisk above for whatever that additional item is. So I knew that what some Title I funding from the state, that I can remove the leadership team stipend, and that the state would be able to provide that for us as we move forward. So there was $5,000 there that I took out, and there's that version. So that's version 2 with the other pieces attached. Version 3, secondary tuition. As I was paying our bills for the high school and Ellsworth, I realized that the numbers that I shared back in March, there was 59 students. At this point, there's 57 students for those 2 schools when I add everything up for going to next year based on some students that that I would be leaving. And then I thought that maybe we could take 2 more off and have contingency be 6 instead of 8 as a way of trying to help save money. And you can see what that savings would be with the 57 students plus 6 contingency instead of 8. And then you can see how that plays out below. Then version 4, taking a look at the after school program was sort of the next piece, but doing it only for our 5-8. As we know, our model of standards-based, there are some aspects within what we do for kids in the middle school who are struggling and still want to participate in co-curricular activities, and having an opportunity for after-school program in terms of making sure that they can participate and still keep up working on meeting the standards. You know, if we were to do it just for 5-8 kids, then that would be a $10,000 savings there. And then you can see how that plays out. The next version 5 was removing the after school program altogether. Then there's how that plays out. And then the final version was taking a look at, and as Mark had said, some of these things are really hard, removing pre-K, this year as we think about, what our needs are and, what the realities are in the community. And then you can see how that sort of plays out with that sped reserve. One of the things I did not share with folks, but I have the numbers for it if people were interested, is I also have a version of these cuts. So let's say we decided to utilize the district special education reserve for this student for this year to be able to spread out those costs. I do have those, the numbers for each of those versions. If you were to do that, what that looks like. So if you were to remove that special ed for this year, those costs, you could see what that, I can share with you what those look like. If there's a version that you're interested in, I can sort of tell you what those numbers are. And then I could share that document at some point.
Yeah.
Tom?
Tom?
I don't think that I don't think we need that document because I think it's going to be a no fly, just like last year's town meeting. I don't think we should bother with the work because they'll just do the same thing and suggest that we just pay for it and not take it out as a loan or what. It's almost a free money, but whatever, something that has to be repaid. So I don't think that you need to go through the effort of that. I do have some other questions, but I wanted to let you continue if there was more.
No, now that I kind of, wanted to be able to, so you went through what my thinking was as I was putting that together. And then, so I'm open to questions.
How risky is it to reduce the extra secondary tuition?
Mike, go ahead, but Nancy, that's probably a good area for you to weigh in after Michael, please.
I think historically over the years, we either would have 4 or 3 extra as a way of trying to, protect the budget and try to be as conscious as possible. There had been some years where we went over those numbers. I think 6 had been the highest. I don't think we ever rose to 8. So when I sort of thought back to the years where we had some of those increases where we under budgeted, I don't think we ever came up above 6. And so I felt at this time that might be a reasonable number. But I'll let Nancy also chime in.
Yeah, Mike has looked it all over and I agree with him as far as, I know we have, at times definitely used the overage numbers and they have been lower. And I think around 6 was about the max. So it would probably be a good thing to think about as an adjustment.
I think that everybody knows how I feel about that. I'd like the number 10 because I always worry for a rainy day. My concern with lowering it is they're now doing the next phase of the building of the condos down the street, and we might get more kids from that, and that has me worried. I mean,
that I will just say this to that piece, Jennifer, regardless of what happens with any developments or building or homes, from experience, I can tell you it behooves all of us to work collaboratively. I saw unprecedented growth in a community that I was superintendent in, and the reality of that unprecedented growth was a brand new middle school that we built, a $34 million middle school at the time, was full within a couple of years, and a wing had to be added on. I mean, those are the types of things that happen when we don't plan strategically and we don't work collaboratively. Growth and development is good, but we've got a plan for that with our schools. The alternative is if we don't plan, if well, there's a saying, failing to plan is planning to fail. It doesn't matter which side of the equation. Everything is going to have a balance, and there's a cause and effect. But if we don't work collaboratively together, we have a wonderful school and a wonderful facility. Does anybody want to start seeing portables show up? Does anybody want to start seeing that facility degrade in infrastructure? No. But there are so many resources. We're at bare bones with things we're recommending cutting back that are going to have some implications if we don't plan forward. Examples will be and are roofs. They are physical pieces that are going to break down with a building of that age, but also we've had a good maintenance record. That's why we want to keep a healthy building reserve for unanticipated piece. But capital and improvement planning is going to be really important if there is going to be growth. And we know at some level, the enrollment report outlined, whether it's right or wrong, outlined 2 communities in the AOS that will see growth. Regardless of what that growth realizes, and we welcome and accept all families and all children, any addition is going to require some additional services for whatever those children may need. It doesn't need necessarily being special education. It could be gifted and talented, whatever, staffing, all of those pieces, it goes hand in hand. The alternative is that if we don't prepare for that, existing programs, if we have to get to a number, are going to be cut, and existing services will be cut. What that results in, and I'm not trying to scare anybody, I'm just laying it out for you. Larger class sizes, less programs, and those have implications across the board. We don't want to see any of that. I think that, I'm just going to point back to this. Whatever people decide to do with the school options report, at the end of the day, the numbers don't change no matter what the relationship is. Those costs don't go away. And if let's just deal with the elephant in the room. If it's about insurances and collective bargaining agreements and salaries, which that's the majority of our budget, let's face it, right? Those don't go away or go down. If there's any movement afoot by anyone to withdraw or go in a different direction to try to navigate rising budget trajectories, the common labor law will tell you that those contracts are frozen. They don't go down. You don't mandate what those salaries or benefits will be. It doesn't work that way. But I guess I will just come back to the fact that we're at a critical juncture. And if we don't work together, there are going to be some significant impacts on our children and our school. And we've been seeing this for the last 3 years. It's here now. I don't see any other pathway. Look, I'll turn it over to Nancy Thurlow. I'll say this. Nancy's been doing this for 40 years, nearly 40 years of experience as a business manager. If there's something we haven't thought of, whether that be on the town side, the school side, the principal side, Nancy, please tell us, is there something that we haven't thought of or done that we should be doing differently with how we're approaching our budget?
No, I mean, Mike has been very thorough with going through and trying to find, any savings, and obviously we keep finding challenges in this budget, and I mean, you only get just so much money from the state, or there isn't a lot of there isn't revenue there really to just the state subsidy, and so I don't see, it is what it is, basically.
Yep.
Sorry to say.
The one thing that I'll keep harping on, Jennifer, is that it's incumbent upon all government officials, elected officials, to work with our legislative bodies in Augusta and beyond. That's where the relief is going to come from, and it's bigger than Trenton. Communities that have the same demographics, we know in Trenton there's a 6-mile corridor for that pathway that is largely the corridor for businesses. There are businesses all throughout the community of Trenton, but that corridor is very narrow. Diversity of revenue streams will be important, and looking at creative ways to increase that revenue stream beyond just the homeowner is, I think, important. It's an important consideration.
What's everybody else's feelings on the sheet and what you've been hearing? Gary?
I don't know. I think just on participation that the after-school program and the pre-K program would be really hard to reduce those. I mean, I won't have a kid there next year, but still, the amount of times that the kids took advantage of the after-school program, and I would like to have them taken advantage of a pre-K program, but I guess I could see the lowering of the tuition and some of the other ones, but those 2 items are pretty hard to get rid of.
Well, I think the after-school program really helps the parents in the community who are working and can't get to the school to pick up the kids on time, or can't have somebody home for their kids when they get off the bus. And especially since, now they are contributing financially to it. And I agree with the pre-K program. But these are such hard times right now. It's just, I don't know what to do or say. I don't want to see the pre-K program getting taken out.
Jennifer,
Yes.
if I may, you passed a budget and you advanced that. I'm not sure if that's been published in the town report or not, but since that has happened and COVID-19, there's been a lot of things that have transpired. No question, there's probably going to be some motions on the town floor when town meeting, however that unfolds, happens. I don't know whether or not you have to act immediately or tonight. It might be that the school committee needs some time to digest this. Also, if folks are receiving, this is being broadcast to everyone. Hopefully, maybe you'll get some outreach as board members from parents, from community members in terms of what their priorities are. And so that ultimately that decision is going to be made at some point at town meeting through the residents. What a perfect opportunity. I mean, look, many of us, you guys have been doing this a while. We don't see many people come to our meetings except for town meeting. Maybe this is an opportunity for folks to share what's important to them, what they want to see for their children in school. And then also, maybe there are some expectations from residents in terms of how we need to work or what we need to do to develop down the road a plan or a pathway that's going to be successful for everyone, and that balance. What I might suggest is that we hold another meeting next week virtually. And then if the school committee would like to take some action or some changes, you could do it then, but I'm sure we could schedule something in a week or sooner or later. That gives you a little time to really process, because this is an important decision and much to consider. Thank you for that opportunity to just suggest it.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I think that really tonight, no decision should be made on any of these, because there's a lot to look at and a lot to go over. And I just don't want to make a willy-nilly decision, to appease the budgets. We really need to take consideration into this and decide what we want to present if we want to change anything. A lot of information. a lot of information. Tom?
Have we ever looked into increasing the cost that parents provide for after school? I mean, it's a great deal. And I know through some conversations that quite a few who would be willing to put more towards it. So it's not going to amount to a lot, but again, every little bit I think helps at this point. We could at least do a poll or consider what that might be. I don't know.
We haven't changed the amount since we started. I'd have to look back what it is. It is for free and reduced. It's free for students who are free. It's reduced for those who get reduced lunch, and then there's the full pay option. And I got to go back to that form to see what that number it is. But it is, when you look at organizations around.
Mike, why don't you do? I take a look at that and see, the history of when it started, what the amount is. Certainly, I don't want to scare anybody either for families that, might need that program, and free and reduced, that will still continue. But as Tom said, every little bit helps, and we might be time to evaluate what that fee is. And if we do meet in a week, you'd have time to provide some recommendations there.
Yep.
I think it's only $2 a day.
I think it's something like that, yeah. And then 80 cents or something for if you're reduced.
And the board can also establish, you have a contingency fund. There's always way to take care of children and families in need. We can navigate that.
And when we first started the after-school program, it was on a grant when we were a part of the Ellsworth Union. Is there any grants out there for after-school programs that we might be able to get help for?
Well, certainly we should explore all the options. Maine Community Foundation, and we can look at those pieces. It's never, look, any idea, any option, and any pathway is on the table, and to include any funding that might be released during this period of time for COVID-19. We should look at all of our options. And again, I didn't mention it earlier too, but along those lines, the emergency aid that we receive for special education funding, we've researched that in this instance, and we're going to go back and do some further dialogue. But I just want folks to know we're going to look into any possibility.
Do you think, based on anything you've heard from others or seen across your desk, indicate that federal might be helping the schools because of this COVID?
I'm going to be careful with that. I'd like Julie to weigh in. I think the short answer is yes, but, and the yes, but is yes, I do see funds coming, and I do see that an opportunity for us to utilize them, but the guidelines have not been finalized and released, and there's some things that just need to be worked out. We hope to see that very soon. Julia, do you want to add to anything on that?
There's not much more to add. We're waiting for the guidelines. We are not eligible for a lot of money because it's based on our Title I formula, which we don't get a lot of Title I money. Mm-hmm. There are 21st century centers that get funded by the feds. We haven't looked into that. One thing that we could do, and I haven't talked to Mike about this, would be to if it were removed from the budget and we had a COVID-19 expense because we wanted to ensure that kids didn't have widening gaps because of the remote learning, we could run an after-school program. If the funding's available, we can use it for that. So it's an acceptable use, but it's not clear to me that we're going to really get that much. And I'm hoping it will cover extra food costs and extra technology costs and other emergency supply costs that we've had, is my hope.
Okay. Now, if we don't have obviously we're not having our May town meeting, And now I think I've heard rumors of sometime in July. What do we operate now? No, Tom?
So, well, I can, regardless of the date, if you'd like, I can tell you what happens if the budget doesn't pass very quickly. Just, that's a great question. So if by 30 June, if we don't have a budget in place, which seems remote, I mean, there's some complicating things. You can't just say we're going to have a town meeting, because right now we all have to, whether we like it or not, operate under the guidelines of the governor, and that is no gatherings of 50 or more. So let's think of the logistics of that. Okay, how does that work? Who's gonna shepherd that? Who's gonna monitor that? Who's gonna police that? Where is it going to be held? Think about this. Our town meetings in Trenton have been very well attended. That's a good thing. How do we maintain social distancing 6 feet apart and 50 or less people? And allow for the community to have voice? Those are things, regardless of that all have to be considered. And it's going to take time to do that. And I'm confident we'll get to that place. All the communities will, in concert with their charters and their ordinances and all that. But it's not just something we can say, we're holding a meeting, because we have to make sure that we maintain public health and safety guidelines. That's first and foremost. Second to that is that if we don't have a budget in place, where are we at? By law, we would maintain the FY20 budget. And so the page would turn from June 30th to July 1st, the FY20 budget would be in place. And people will say, well, okay, you have a budget. That's not that simple, because once you turn the page, we are navigating collective bargaining agreements, salaries, insurance increases, fuel costs, all of those other pieces. Even though we're being very mindful of every penny, there's still going to be a gap. And so that gap would have to be navigated. And in that case, I will be forced as superintendent to institute some real significant safeguards to make sure that we can continue operating with our students' needs and our staff needs in place. Whatever the date is that the town is considering, they need to have consideration of public health and safety, where they're going to locate it, when. But I do anticipate that there'll be a period of time, whether it be days or weeks, that we're going to be in that category of not having a successor budget. And that is going to be true in many of the communities. Nancy and I have to oversee 11 budgets throughout the AOS. We have to pass and navigate 11 budgets. And right now, the AOS budget, even though that may have been passed earlier, is still in check, because there are many, many things it's not officially, we don't have any funds to operate until each town approves it, number one. So there are only 2 communities in the AOS that have had their budgets passed and approved through town meeting. That is Cranberry Isles and Swans Island. And they both had those occur prior to COVID-19. So we're going to have a period of time where that's going to be really, really, we're going to have to work real closely together to make sure that we can. And that, what I just described too, I believe is correct for municipalities, in that if they don't have a budget in place municipally, they operate under that current fiscal year until a successor budget is passed.
What about voted positions?
Voted positions, thank you. Voted positions would maintain continuity. In short, you'd maintain your position until a vote can take place. So a seated individual maintains their seat, and the expectation that they would act accordingly until a vote is taken.
Thank you, Mark.
Just for reference, I mean, and I know things are changing, but the 4-stage reopening, there's no gatherings of more than 50 people through August. And I mean, things can change, but as of right now, we're looking at September.
Yeah.
So, months.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody have any other questions or comments?
Gary has his hand up.
Gary?
All right, so it's a budget related comment, and it's kind of related to the school or evaluation option committee. Is that on page 35, they say that the Southern Penobscot Regional Program pays $30,000 to $40,000 per child to Kids Piece. And we are paying $70,000 per child to Kids Piece. And I kind of want to know if that's true, and how in the world can the state allow a company to charge $20,000 to $30,000 more per student for the same services?
Gary, I'll research that with both Melissa Beckwith, our special education director, and Nancy, and we'll get back to you. Again, I haven't had time to dissect or go through that report. Just in glancing, I had some other questions about some of the figures and costs, but that's a good piece, and that's a good start, because you might be onto something. And if that's correct, there's a piece that we need to address, and that's some significant costs there.
Yeah, I have several other questions on the report and figures and stuff, but that's the one that just really got me, is that they're like an airline seat. You're buying last minute, and other people get, cheaper rates, and for the same services. That just doesn't seem right when it's this. I think Julie or somebody can recommend, I think it's there are state mandate rates on this one though, or is that wrong?
Well, what I can say without seeing the actual pieces, I do know that there's a collaboratory between some areas, some school districts, Bangor. I am familiar with the Spruce program. And I want to be careful, because I don't know if it's a direct reference to Kids Piece, what the cost. We'll get it all out there publicly. But at the end of the day, what some districts will do is they do an internal program that is regionalized. And I don't know if that's what this indicates, or if it's actually Kids Piece and a comparison of the rates, but I'll research it. Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of, I'm looking at that paragraph now and sort of reading it, and I'm not sure if the Spruce program, because they have, students, they have a place in, believe it's in Bangor,
Yes.
where the students go, and whether that $30,000 and $40,000 cost is what Bucksport and the other schools are paying, as compared to what we can pay to go to Kids Piece. Not that they're charged less because they're part of Spruce to go to Kids Piece, but that would be something to clarify. And I'm still interested in digging a little bit in terms of, making sure the numbers that we have for tuition, and Nancy and I were talking a little bit about that today, and collecting our invoices and making sure we are right on the money, with our costs around tuition. And for us, tuition includes not only the regular school year, when you count those days, then you add in summer programming for these students. And most of these students have, extended school year through their IEPs. So we have to factor that in. So I'll just do, in terms of doing a deep dive and making sure our tuition number is true, I will do that. And I think, like Mark said, taking a look at those numbers and making sure we understand what that is saying there.
Mike, too, also, when you're looking at that, let's put it into context too, because yeah, the cost may be cheaper in an area program in Bangor, but we are still responsible for our transportation costs. And if you look at to and fro to Bangor each day, I want to see that number included as well.
Yep.
As opposed to Kids Piece.
It's going to be very high. It'll be very high.
Yes, it will. Really high. So that may be why I've been your superintendent 4 years, but I'll tell you, you had continuity of superintendency for a long time through Mr. Lebo and Mr. Coulter, and our business manager of many, many years. I'm certain those costs were explored and evaluated, but I'll do some research, because if there's a way to find savings and maintain services with our kids, we're all on the same team with that.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, Gary? Anybody else? I do just want to say something under the other business that had nothing to do with this, but something Mike had said. He said that I was helping with the food. And I just want to let you guys know that the least amount of food we've given out was 68 meals, or 68 families, bags. And the most was 74, plus 2 extras for Hancock County for students that they were paying for to pick up food here. And the parents, on the most part, 95% of them, are so appreciative of me, Stephanie, Vicky, Teresa, and Becky doing this. And, other schools we've heard from, and Teresa's heard from, like Bar Harbor, for instance, had, I think, 40 some odd meals and 12 got picked up. We have had, okay, so the first week it was done, delivered, couldn't be done, too long a driveways, buses couldn't fit, the whole 9 yards. So now we've been doing it pickup from the school for the last maybe month and maybe a week or something. And it starts at 7:30. By 8 o'clock, Stephanie's on the phone calling people who haven't picked up yet to remind them to pick up. And in all this time, we've had 3 meals not picked up. So all of our families are coming, as some, straggling past 8:30, but that's okay. But they're just so appreciative. And I just wanted that in the record that, we have awesome teachers and we have awesome kids and principals and everybody, but we have some awesome parents too. And when they get out of their car and they're like, we wish I can hug you because we're just so appreciative of this food. And some kids are like, well, listen, I don't like ham. Can I have turkey? And Teresa does it. I don't need milk. She does it. We've got some bags with special names on it for special kids who don't want some special food. And it just in a time where I haven't worked since March, makes me feel good that I'm doing something that makes other people feel good. And I just wanted you guys to know that. Okay. Mike?
I wrote something down earlier when I was going through my principal's report and mentioning the fact that parents have been, really incredible in terms of being teachers for their kids. And there's a deep understanding amongst the staff that, just how key they have been. And so, definitely, that point, our parents have been awesome. And they've asked questions and they've reached out. And our kids have been awesome. I wish I'd been able to go to more meetings with kids, but when I'm in either at 8th grade or at kindergarten, it's been, really exciting to see them engaged and doing, the best that they can amongst the circumstances. And I've had some families continually send, because the newsletter has been going out every week, and it's just kind of it's just kind of refreshed on the website to make it a little bit easier to find and update. But folks have been sending in pictures of learning adventures that kids have been going on, and that has been really nice. And we got a really sweet piece from some kids who moved before the COVID crisis, and they made a sign and were standing outside saying how much they missed their teachers here in Trenton. And so just to have those and have a place to be able to show what kids are doing and share that and what families are doing has been, I think, helpful for some. And so that's on our Timberwolf Pack newsletter. You can go there and you can see the pictures. And as I get new ones, I take some off and add new ones on, just so folks can see what's happening in the community. Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to add is, and Mark sort of alluded to it, and maybe we can sort of reach out in a formal way, but as a board, taking a look at the report, reading it thoroughly and coming up with, our questions of our own for, the folks who did all that hard work in the committee, and then some, answers to some of the things that they put together. So in some way, we'll have to find a way to have some back and forth. It's a lot harder now in terms of the situation that we're in, but it definitely will behoove us to have everyone take a look at that and then find a way that we can interact with, those members, as well.
I think context is important. Certainly, being able to provide at least another perspective from the school, because one thing I will allude to is that, there are a lot of people, as Mike said, they'd worked really hard, but this drills down into one point. It's just finance. It's not an educational report. It doesn't talk about those types of pieces. And context is really important, particularly when community members have to make decisions about what their schools look like and what their students are exposed to. So we look forward to providing that context.
Okay, next regular meeting to be determined. Do you think maybe Selena could send out maybe like a Google
poll.
Doc or something so people can see what would be best for everybody's schedule?
Yeah, we can do a doodle poll. And as I was going to say, that's a good point, Jennifer, because we should really be settling in by Friday on the day and time so we can give the public notice and then release the agenda. So, I'll get on that and we'll get something out to you folks. Hopefully this time of day works well for you guys, and appreciate, this was a longer meeting, a lot of stuff, but hopefully we'll be more efficient with your time at the next meeting. And now that we're back in our regular cycle, you won't have to go through these long explanations from your superintendent. Sorry.
Our future agenda items, because our next meeting is something quite specific.
Yep.
There will be no future agenda items for that meeting, but do you have any future agenda items for then our June meeting?
Yes, we're going to need to do a personnel evaluation and report out. The principal, this is a positive thing. This is something we do each year. So we'll need to do that. And I'll need to check with Selena. There's always things that are in the queue with regard to lunches and programming. And certainly the board and the community is going to want to know what's going on with our schools. What's the reopening look like, and when and how? And so that information that there are going to need to be updates. So I would say that needs to be a standing item just in terms of updating the U and the community.
And also, don't we have to add in the verbiage of giving you the authority to hire over the summer?
That would be good as well. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, even if we were meeting during the summer anyway, I think we need to give you that permission too. So
absolutely.
That's on June's agenda as well.
Yes, and Selena's excellent at making sure that we're going to have all those in the queue, and I'll also network with Nancy to make sure. We want to, before we go, just want to make sure too that Nancy and Carol are in constant communication. So as information changes in terms of budgets and meetings, we'll make sure that you have that as well. So I think all those things are going to be regular updates. And certainly I know Julie didn't provide too much tonight because we had a lot going on, but there's going to be a lot for parents and families to know about in the coming days on how we're going to close out the year. I just want to say that parents, I hope, will be really pleased, and students and teachers, that we're going to be using this precious time really, really well to gather feedback, to make sure that conversations can happen between students, parents, and families. And also, everybody really wants to know, when are we getting back to school? And we need to start processing what that looks like and be able to provide some answers. So it's really important we continue to meet, because the information is updated almost daily.
Yep, I agree. And thank you very much for all the hard work that Mike, Mark, Nancy, and Julie, since you're all right here in front of my face, that you're doing. This is unprecedented times without a right answer and without really knowing what's happening, because you make a decision today and you're going to wake up to a message on your phone that something's changed and you've got to readjust. So
I don't want to minimize it, Jennifer, but it's kind of like a big snow day. No matter what you do, somebody's not going to be happy.
Exactly. We do what we can. Okay, then I need a motion to adjourn, if nobody has anything else.
So moved.
Second.
That was by Aaron. Oh, Gary moved?
Aaron.
Oh, sorry. Aaron moved and Tom seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Everyone be healthy and safe.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.